Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. I'm with the Midwest Writing Center, and today I am excited to talk about story in ceramics with Jenna Isbell. For folks who are maybe unfamiliar with the format of this show, we're going to do an interview, then I'm going to give updates on the Midwest Writing Center, and then we're going to have a free write. I'm super pumped that Jenna has provided today's writing prompt because I wish I had come up with it. It's so great. Can't wait to get there. Can wait to get there because we've got a lot going on in the meantime. Jenna is a really cool person who is really active in the Quad Cities and is also a professional potter. So thank you so much for being here, Jenna. Um, that's the first time I've said today.
Good job. First time. Yes, here I am. I'm sitting in my studio right now, so please forgive my lack of ceiling. But that's what happens when your studio is in your basement. But it's a nice place. And see, now I'm saying too. So we are solidly team
It's I have a particular problem with it when I'm on camera. I don't know what that's about. It's not part of my regular speech, but here we are.
I mean, my guess is, at least for me, it's because there's not that like person right there. Even though like I see you and there's the screen there, it's still a little bit like talking into a void.
Thank you for that. Also, I did give a presentation online this morning and said so many times, but it was the first time here today. So with that, I'm just going to start with the basics. How did you discover pottery to begin with? However, whatever that means to you. When I say begin, what does that?
So I would definitely, I mean, formally in, I mean, like you do like clay projects in elementary school and things like that. But as my high school teacher told me, who, let me preface, was a wonderful high school teacher. I love Mr. McClassland very much, but he told me that I was garbage with clay and I needed to stick to painting. And actually that my whole bloodline, the Savatos bloodline, was cursed because he had my brother as well. And he's like, your brother's also garbage with clay. You guys should not do ceramics. You guys are much better painting and drawing and other mediums.
Oh,
Because I'm a terrible, stubborn jerk, I then went to college and proceeded to focus in ceramics.
okay. That doesn't sound terrible, just stubborn.
Well, okay, to be fair, when I went to Augustana, as I got my BA from Augustana College, I was not planning to do studio art. I was planning to do, I was an English major with an English major art history major because I wanted to get into like art critique or writing about art or something like that. I took hand building. I was not good at it, but I
Hand
was
building?
sorry. So in ceramics, there's like wheel throwing, which everyone's very familiar with. Or if you're not using the wheel, you're doing something like coiling or using slabs. It's referred to hand building. So
Thank you.
pretty much like not assisted clay creation. Um, and I wasn't good, but I was determined and I liked it a lot. And the professor, well, Megan Quinn, didn't lie to me and tell me I was great. She was like, well, if you want to keep working on it, I'll keep helping you. Like, it's fine that you're terrible, but like, she didn't like dismiss it and tell me to quit. She was just like, you just got a lot, you got to work on it a lot. I also really like ceramics because at least with my like drawing or painting or collage, I like to do a lot of collage. I found a lot of my work centered around like trauma I had experienced, and which is fine, but I sucked so bad at ceramics, I had to really focus on the like skills, and I couldn't like that trauma couldn't come through because I couldn't convey it. And I ended up finding that really cathartic because for the first time I was doing an art that wasn't consumed by my own past pains. And then as I did get better, I viewed it more as like a transformative thing. Like these things can inform my art, but they don't have to consume it and they don't need to be front and center, because I think that's something I kind of get frustrated sometimes in art. I think there's a lot of trauma porn. I think artists are frequently forced to put all of their struggles and mental illnesses out for everybody as like a show of authenticity or a reason to be supported. And I'm not saying like if your work focuses around trauma, that's fine. Like I get it. But I think people shouldn't be forced into doing that.
So I'm going to make you pick up where you're leaving off, but I'm going to interrupt you because this is something that's really important to me to emphasize. And I probably do it once a month on one of these, but no one is making their best art when they don't want to be there. This awful stereotype or whatever it is of this starving, struggling artist is really, really toxic and bad for artists. It is valid to make art about pain. It is valid to make art when you're in pain, but you are not making your best art. You are not living your best life if you are not happy. No, I didn't want to say happy. I was going to say if you're not happy to be here, but happy is not even close to what I mean. No one is making their best art when they want to die.
Oh, and it's true. And I've, at least for me, ceramics has been very helpful in that way. I mean, the downside is when I'm in a darker place, I very much struggle doing my ceramics. And I end up doing kind of the other forms of art that I treat as hobbies. But I also don't think that's a bad thing either, because and this is something I'm personally struggling with a lot right now in like my identity as an artist, is does my art have to be a hustle, and does it always have to be monetized? Everyone should be able to make a living. I'm not saying that. I'm not team art should just be for the love of it, because that's, I mean, yes, but like that's bullshit to tell artists that they should have to work, 12 jobs and then also do their art. But I definitely fall into the trap of, if I'm doing anything creative, constantly thinking about how to monetize it and how to make it palatable to a wider audience, instead of sometimes realizing some art can just be for me. It can just be private and for my own expression.
That's definitely I just scared the crap out of the kitten by touching her. That's why I'm staring off to the side. That's definitely a odd balancing act because like once you get to a certain place in, and this isn't universal of course, but once you get to a certain place in your art and you're surrounded by community or related to community in whatever way, you see people who are making money and you see people who are treating it as the norm to create for an end. And I made a video just a couple weeks ago about the importance of remembering why you started, because you lose it in the process. And especially depending on the people who are around you and your means of creation, as a writer, I have, a very cheap set of tools. But that's rare, even for other writers. I happen to be a pen and paper girl, but lots of people are not. And I don't ever want to gatekeep the tools that you use. But most kinds of art are not as cheap as pen and paper, or most materials for making art. So yeah, I'm with you. It's very difficult once you've had different ideas ingrained in you about like, what is the purpose? Why am I doing this? And I'm really, really happy to hear that I'm probably going to use this word wrong, but a meditative aspect to your pottery, because I think people talk about like, well, exercise or whatever it is to get your mind off things and also relieve stress. But and exercise is great. But that is, I think, a very pervasive idea that we're creating art for catharsis or to create from feeling. But I knit and I don't cross stitch. I embroider. There's not really a difference except in what you do with the needle. And
They're all needle varieties.
yeah, I shouldn't speak on things about which I don't know. Um, and those things, I started knitting so that I would stop biting my nails. If I'm sitting still, I'm biting my nails. And I learned quickly that when I'm knitting, I'm paying better attention to, I mean, it used to be the TV. Eventually it was like a classroom or a meeting. And that's not something that I'm creating because of my investment in scarves, because I don't know how to make anything. Um, I have plenty of scarves, as it turns out. But it's something that I'm engaged with because it's good for me, not because there's an end. And that's freaking valid. Art doesn't have to be arty. There's an idea I've never encountered, actually.
I was
Art
gonna
doesn't
say
have to be arty.
we can fall into the art versus craft debate, and then we'll be here for about 10 hours because I'll go off.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think that everything is art. That's probably not a helpful take, but it's the one I'm settling on for today.
It's not the worst take. I'd much rather have it be wide open than very gatekeepy and gross.
Also, I mean, I don't think you can call my knitted creations craft. Just based on I can make a scarf.
I mean, if that scarf has the same stitches at the beginning as it does at the end, that's impressive.
It
Oh, never
doesn't.
mind. Sorry.
But listen, it is functional sometimes. Sometimes it can't actually wrap, and what I've done is run out of yarn.
Then you stitch the ends together, make it a cowl.
I don't know what a cowl is.
So it's like the loopy ones. It's like the scarf that's attached, like it's just like
Oh,
a circle.
I have
And
one
then
of those.
that on
Somebody else
top.
made it and it's gorgeous. Anyway, so thank you for introducing that idea that art doesn't have to be arty. Um, and also introducing this idea that, like, I don't know how to say this. Your career is creating art. Um, but you also create art differently with different mediums. I've heard, that people have different personalities in different languages. And I think that sounds very similar. I want to I want to go back to your teachers did not see talent and it is your career now. I think that is so badass. You just were determined, and that's not a story. I mean, we see that in like sports, which really is problematic. We create hoop dreams out of that idea, right? That if you just try hard, you'll be a superstar. Super toxic idea. Um, but it worked for you because you were not. I'm clarify. Please correct and clarify. Um, it worked for you because it wasn't the thing in which you were investing your emotions. Does that
No, that makes sense, and that was what really drew me to it as well. Because it was still, I've always been, kind of inclined towards expressive arts. I was in orchestra for a very long time. I did hilarious competitive German folk dancing.
I'm sorry.
Um,
What?
yes. I was a very serious German folk dancer in high school and competed. Um, and I mean that I don't want to like paint this picture that like I've always been artistically inclined. I for a very long time I thought I was going to go to Caltech and be a chemist. Like I was that kid. I wish I had like the beautiful like I knew what I wanted to do right out of the gate, but I am very much more like I was the kid who every grade wanted to be something different and explored a lot of different things. I'm 100% a jack of all trades, master of none. I mean, I guess I'm pretty good at ceramics at this point. But I have made it my career, but I know I also feel like a lot of people do, probably in some imposter syndrome, because I'm like, well, most of my income is made from making mugs that say things like alpaca my bags. Is that art?
I
Is
used one
that
of your
just
mugs this morning, but I put it away already.
right? Or that like I also have a part-time job as a studio tech, which means I work at Augustana as a studio tech, which means I like prepare materials for the various art classes. I do things like make clay, I repair looms, I help out with classroom instruction. And I think I often struggle with this idea that if I'm not constantly making art, or if my primary income is not art, does that now make me no longer an artist?
Oof.
Or
The
yeah,
answer is no, but I feel you.
or a sellout, or pandering to consumerism. Say the stuff I primarily make to pay the bills, because like I mean I like making super complicated bowls that are beautiful with all of this intricate, I was going to say sgraffito, but that's like a drawing technique into clay where you paint and then carve away to reveal the clay body underneath. um and I shouldn't say I don't sell those works, but for me to not undervalue myself, I sell them for a lot more. They don't move as quickly. And that's not something I can spend all of my time doing, because I have, I have a mortgage. I have I have to pay for gas and eggs. Oh my God, I gotta cut eggs out of my diet now, which is a problem for me because I eat a lot. Like that's my go-to protein source.
Shoot, I made a note in my head instead of writing it down, and now I don't remember what it I want. Oh, yes, okay. Um, in that aforementioned video that I made a couple weeks ago about like why you started making art, I also talked about I used to have this statement that I used to guilt myself into creating, which was if you want to be a writer, you have to write. If you want to be an artist, you have to make art. And I came to the realization, um, a few weeks ago, that it's actually the opposite. I have to make art because I'm an artist. And if you don't invert that, if you don't change that around, it will be punishing. It's bad. You are an artist, and that is what you create. You're not trying to meet some goal. It's innate in all of us. I'm going to go ahead and say every single one of us is an artist. We are just trained out of it. But I mean, of course, I experience that too. I tell people all the time, because it's very important to me, that there are jobs in the arts, but my job is not creating art. And if it were, I would probably like art less. Once you have to do something, it loses a lot of its magic. And I love working in the arts, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. In fact, I try desperately to trade everything else for it. um, but it's not, I don't have some sponsor. It's not the Renaissance. There's no one else paying the bills, so I can do whatever it is I want, which like right now would be research into um my high school's band program, which you don't know what I'm writing right now. But that's a relevant thing. And you take these really wonderful classes on how to write nonfiction, or you do if you're me. And and they tell you follow every lead, because you don't know what's going to come, what's going to change the story. And so that's a sticking point for me right now, which I did, I reached out to a friend and asked a question, and that's as much as I'm capable of right now because I have a job. But here's an example of a time when I did follow the research. I was writing about driving around listening to music, as you do as a human. I was going to say as a teenager. I want to create an anthology of just stories about driving around, period. And one of the things I discovered was this band, which was never famous, but somebody had recorded it. I had gotten the recording. It was something I listened to when I drove around. But the concert that I was listening to, somebody, recorded with a tape deck or something, was before I was born. So I ended up doing research into this particular show, which led me into finding that this bar where the show happened, um, like I didn't know where it was, first of all, but I ended up finding a Facebook group that was the regulars from the bar, and they, in like 6 months, were having a get together of all the old regulars. And I ended up going to this lunch and meeting these people who were regulars at a bar 20 years before I was born. And it turned into an entirely different essay. It's 2 essays now. About like how, the places where we come of age don't disappear, even if they disappear. So, there was a point.
I believe you.
Yeah, we feel like we have to be monetizing things because we live in a world in which things cost money. Um, and when we have the freedom, we can create really cool stuff, but we usually don't have that freedom. So we have to make the art that we can make when we can make it. And a lot of when we can make it is based on opportunity, not on ability. Ooh, that felt
And
deep.
oh yeah. I was gonna circle back, and I'm gonna reveal something that I personally struggle with a lot, and my former professor Megan Quinn has been helping me unpack actually. I actually tend to bristle at the idea of everyone as an artist. And but I know it's a me problem. It's not a problem with the statement, it's a me problem. And I realized, and I was trying to figure out like why do I bristle when I hear that? And I realize it's because, unfortunately, like when you say it, I know you mean it in a very like, everyone is inherently creative, everyone likes to create and make their world a more beautiful place. Or maybe I shouldn't say beautiful, but like, people want to create, that's what humans do. But I have found in so many venues it's used as a way of also devaluing the arts.
Yeah. Yeah,
um
absolutely. Because, or like, I'm gonna guess, and so I want you to elaborate whether or not I'm correct, but like
mhm.
you're at an art fair and someone's like, how did you do that? I can make it myself.
Yes, yes. Or there are often talks about creativity where they're like, everyone is an artist, that are frequently spaces that are not including artists, like people who also like identify as artists. It's like, I think of a lot of like almost like self-help guru sort of
Hmm.
situations.
I will say, yeah, sometimes I see something about like these people where like you pay them and they publish your work and it's not, I mean, it's a scam, first of all. Um, but it really bothers me because I think that it's encouraging people to, oh, you've dug something. It's encouraging people to go about art wrong. I don't know if I believe that there's a wrong way to go about art, but definitely paying someone else to call you an artist is wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's also hard too to talk about, is that there's, I mean, with everything, and so hopefully I'm not being too much of a downer, there's a ton of toxicity in the art world. So on one hand, you have people, if you have the means, doing things like self-publishing, or if you have the money to rent out a gallery space, put up your art, having gone through no obstacles. On one hand, I think that's awesome, but like having to not per se go through the trials and tribulations that are common. But then the question is, are you accessing this space purely because of monetary reasons? And are you open to any form of criticism? I think sadly, criticism in the art world is frequently weaponized and used as like, I mean, with so many fields, there's this idea that you have to like break the art student before they like really become an artist, which is,
No, we don't believe that here.
yeah, no, I think that's bullshit. I think we need to start realizing that we need to decouple making a suggestion about someone's work to improve it. Um, should not be coupled with this idea that you need to like break the spirit of the person.
So this is I've noticed, I've been advised it's less common in non-writing spaces. I don't know if that's true. I want to make the note that like anytime you have a community of people who are capital letter this thing, there's a lot of toxicity, and I don't know what that's about. I think we live in a society that's inherent, that's created a competitiveness, and that's what that's about. But in writing specifically, there's this workshop method in which the artist is silent and everyone else is right about your work. And that's problematic. If we're getting together to do criticism, we need to have in mind your goals for your work, and we need to work toward your best work, not my best work or my taste in work. And that's what a lot of criticism is. It's me telling you how to make it something I would like, not me trying to find what you need. Which, if you're not up for that, maybe don't join a criticism group.
True, and I think that's true. I run into that a lot with students at Augustana. Students, because it's hard. It's hard to hear that you've done something wrong. I get that. I maybe because my journey is a little weirder, I really thrive and I look for those suggestions, as long as, like you said, it's to help me become a better artist and not to make myself into some other thing.
Give criticism in good faith, take criticism in good faith.
Yes. But, and maybe that's kind of a slight advantage ceramics has, especially because I primarily like to work in, I guess, what would be considered egalitarian ceramics. Useful, like not useful, I hate to say the word useful. All art is useful, but like mugs, bowls, teapots, things that I want, yes, people are using on an everyday basis. So that, like, if a student is like, hey, I made this mug, I'll be like, oh, hey, it's a really good mug, but your handle attachment's crap and it's gonna break in 5 days. Like, it's not a critique of you as an artist. Like, you could be a great form and everything like that, but if you don't have that nice join, you're gonna put it in the dishwasher and it's gonna pop right off, because a little bit of water is gonna get in there and turn into steam and launch it out. So I think, at least from that perspective, there is like an advantage of being like, okay, well, this is about my craftsmanship and per se, instead of your art. But that's not to say that other people haven't. I've had lots of people, I use a lot of floral motifs in my work. I have had a slew of people tell me that I shouldn't do that. It's too feminine. It takes away from the form. It's overly decorated, things of that nature. But I then remember, like, those critiques aren't coming from a way of how can I advise this person to make their floral motifs work better. They're just telling me to scrap it because they don't like floral motifs, and that's
Oh yeah, I
garbage,
once
and they
had
can go
somebody
on.
tell me, I don't even remember what it was, but they didn't like that I used the word razor. And that their entire critique was based on that, which isn't helpful. Like,
No.
that's
weird. Did you use it incorrectly?
No, it was like, we didn't use this term at the time, but I think maybe it was triggering. I don't know for sure. But I want to backtrack a tiny bit and tell you something just like maybe a little too hippy dippy about myself, which is that when I say that we are all artists, I mean that an inherent part of life is creation. Yeah. I don't, maybe this goes with the art versus craft thing, but like, I think that the act of creation is artful. I would call cooking an art, not baking though. Baking is so exact. I don't know how people do it. It's probably art. It's just an art that I can't brain. the act of creation is a special thing. Now, okay, back
No,
to
but
my
I was gonna say no. I like that you circled back to that, because usually when I hear, which is why like when I hear you say everyone is an artist, I actually don't bristle, because I know you and I know you're not saying it in like a demeaning way. It's when I hear people generally say it in a way that I'm a little skeptical of, and to be honest, I am a sarcastic ass sometimes. Can I swear on this? I should have asked that. I should
I
have,
don't care.
if ass is okay to say.
You're still hanging out with me.
Oh, okay. So I can be, and I know that's not always
You've
the
got a
best
swear word behind your
course.
head.
Oh, I guess that's true. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I've got several if you look closely.
My vision's not good.
That I'll often quip something like everyone's a doctor. And from a perspective, you could argue everyone is. Everyone has to, you know, heal themselves, heal others, take into check like what they are. But if I say everyone's a doctor, they're like, no, that takes years of schooling and board certification. Everyone is not a doctor. And I'm like, okay, well then let's unpack how everyone's not, like, we need to go back. Then why is it okay to say everyone's an artist but not or everyone's a lawyer? That there are these certain careers that are considered like above and sacred in the hierarchy, and others are, my kindergartner could do that. I
Do you okay, an aside, but one that is delightful for me. There's a book, a favorite book. Well, it's a book I like a lot. It's related to one of my top 10 favorite books, but it's not my top 10 favorite book. In which, so the book is Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut. And I have a tattoo of the painting that could be two tattoos of it that could have been created by a kindergartner. And now this artist's work is being recreated by kindergartners. And the artist responds to this criticism because people are dumbfounded and very upset that their city spent $1 million or whatever on this painting with their tax dollars. And the artist responds to that with, I'm so happy your kindergartners are creating the same art. I'm so happy that they're expanding on it. And I'm so happy that they can. This is accessible to them. But the fact is that they didn't make it. I made it. I made it first. And it is now creating this conversation. And that is creating more art. And then he explains the artwork, which I'm not going to get into because I'll get emotional. Because it means so much to me, which is why I got it tattooed twice. I love that changed how I think about my kindergartner could make this. And like, dope. Let's do it.
Yeah, and I definitely used to be that person. Yeah, 100%. And even after I started, I mean, my BA's in the arts, but like my major in art and things like that, I would, especially some forms of abstract art, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? Anyone could do this. This is dumb. This is meaningless. This is that's not to say I still don't think there are some pieces of work that are dumb and meaningless and piss me off, but I don't immediately dismiss them based off the idea that a kindergartner could do this, because one, a kindergarten didn't. We always say that a kindergartner could do that, but kindergartners are actually not making this work. I've not seen. I hang out now with a lot of toddlers. I have 4 nieces, 4 and under. I've very I am deeply intimate with their artwork, and none of it's hanging in a postmodern gallery.
But the sorry was for the sound. I love kids.
Oh no, I know that. I know it was for the sound. I think their art is great. I think it's super interesting. I actually draw a lot of inspiration from them, because if there's one thing that kids draw exactly what they see. Like, you might look at their art and go like, that's not what they're drawing. And it's like, no, that is,
it's exactly,
it is what they see. Especially, I like the idea of like when you look at like kids' proportion. Now I'm on a
motor
completely different
skills
wrap.
necessarily.
Yes, but they are expressing 100% pure what they feel like. And when they draw a big head with arms and legs, that's because your face is a very important thing to them. That's the thing conveying all the information to them. And you can't let your feelings get hurt when the 4-year-old pinpoints. And I made sure to get your nose the right size. Thanks, Jasmine. Yes, I do have a distinct nose, but they draw exactly what they see. But yeah, that goes back to the, it's meant to be an insult. And maybe it's like so many other things. There's tons of genuine critique of art and artists and work, but it actually takes effort to
If it's
figure out
not
what
in
those
good
critiques.
faith.
Yes. If you're just in there being an ass, then why? I don't know. Maybe that's the my mid-30s epiphany is I'm really getting over the why be an ass for the sake of being an ass. There's so much stuff to be an ass about that's like legit, like an actual fight to go fight. Like it's exhausting to be an ass all the time.
When you mentioned bristling at the idea of everyone being an artist, and then I had to defend my reasoning behind thinking that those people, I mean, the people who are asking you for money are robbing you. But I had to defend that, right? And I wondered if partially this idea that we're all in competition is a huge problem, but I made it here via process, and I have a lot of pride or identity or all of these things, or investment. I've invested in a lot of ways in my ability to call myself an artist. And maybe there's a feeling of I am losing something if everyone gets that. And that's an ego problem. That's not real. But if if I don't check myself, I'll probably have that thought process, right? You don't get to call yourself that because I worked so hard. It's not valid. It's not valid.
Yeah, and I was very happy that my former professor Megan Quinn, and I love her to death. And so she was the one who never blew up and shut out my ass, would tell me if I'm crappy, but would also tell me how to improve. That she pointed out that, like, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she was like, your problem isn't the idea that everyone's an artist. Your problem is the idea that people are trying to say others are better than you because you're an artist. They're devaluing you. The issue is the system. The issue is not the idea that everyone's an artist. And that was super helpful for me. And it's something that I have to really keep in front all the time. And hopefully I don't go too leftist on you, but like a lot of the problem, especially in art, is capitalism, is hierarchy, is patriotism, not patriotism, patriarchy, but patriotism can sometimes come up too. Sorry, I'm gonna get real spicy on your writing show. So I'm thinking of, like, I don't know if this is how relevant to your viewers, but AI, like, a lot of people are freaking out about AI art and AI writing. I have read a lot of debates, and I get really frustrated because at the end of the day, it kind of breaks down into two camps. There's camp, art is about, like, the joy of making art. You shouldn't be against AI art because, like, you should be making art whether or not, you shouldn't care if your work's being stolen because it's all for the world and we need to all just be, like, communicating and free love. But, like, that argument, yeah, sorry, not free love, but, like, I mean, I use that, I
Free
guess I'm
love
using
like
that.
free Mandela.
Oh, yes. No, like, where people are like, art should be existing as if we're in a utopia, which I would love if that were the case. I would love to just make for the sake of making, but we don't, because we're in a system where
We can't.
we can't. And then of course there's the side that's like, no, we can't. We need to pay the bills. We can't have our work stolen from us. But I'll even say I think sometimes that side goes too far, because they're like, we need to get rid of AI art and we need to get rid of AI generated everything. I think that cat's out of the bag. There's no going back. I think the really depressing thing is they could be really great tools. I would be lying to say that I've never used AI content as a tool to help me, especially with heck, I had it help me write like a cover letter. I didn't use it, but I definitely get like that blank page anxiety. And the AI thing, the thing it created was garbage. 100% would not use that cover letter, but it then gave me something to start picking apart, and then it was a springboard for me to be like, okay, I could to write what I needed to write.
I need to do an episode on AI art. This is so great.
It's interesting, and I think there's a lot of debate, but I get sad because I think a lot of the debate isn't actually about the tool itself. It's about how it's being used in our system. Like, I see a lot of people get mad about it, and I see a lot of people get mad about how it's stealing from artists and this and that. And maybe it's unfair of me, but I kind of want to poke those people and be like, okay, large corporations have been stealing from artists for a very long time. Marginalized
still
groups,
wrong.
Huh?
Which is still wrong.
It's still wrong. It's 100% still wrong. Marginalized groups have been getting fucked over by other artists, especially, white heteronormative artists stealing from queer BIPOC artists for a very long time. It is a rich history of shit rolling downhill. So I often get frustrated with like, it's not the AI art. It's not the AI art, guys. It's the system that allows us to take advantage of each other and rewards it. That is what we need to be critiquing. We need to be talking about how it's a tool. So it's about how you use the tool and not like the tool itself. It's not going away. Sure, I guess it can maybe solve some problems, but it's not going away. We're always going to find a new and awesome way to take advantage and fuck each other over. Especially if there's a profit margin involved. So there's no avoiding that. I'd rather incentivize and make a system where the goal is to create cool stuff and not to just bypass having to pay for someone's labor.
Yeah, I think probably there's a really easy solution. I mean, in theory, in hypothesis, which is, it's cool. We can have things that we enjoy. But if labor didn't go into creating it, we probably shouldn't pay for it. And so I would say it's cool to consume AI art. It's not cool to sell it. It's not cool to use it and call it your own. It's not cool to use someone else's work, and profit off it as a robot. But like, where people can find joy, they should get joy. They should get joy for free if no one's labor went into creating it. And if someone's labor went into creating it, they should get paid for that labor.
I think you get into the really interesting thing, but of the labor of creating the AI art, the algorithm.
Someone made the robot, yeah.
Someone made the robot. Someone has to pay for the energy that runs the robot. But no, I think it's complicated, but I'd rather us have a really robust and complicated discussion about it than just be like AI art good or AI art bad. Because at the end of the day, I don't think it's about the AI at all. It's about how do we deal with this tool in the system we've created.
It's beautiful.
And I don't know, and I've read cool things, like especially from art therapists who have liked it a lot because it allows people to put in prompts and create works that like you said, they enjoy or reflects an emotion. It helps them express something that maybe they were having a hard time expressing. But then again, we could circle back to the end of the day. If we didn't pound out creativity and tell people that artistic skills are completely freaking useless, we wouldn't now be adults who have a complete and total inability to express ourselves, written, verbally, visually. So and I also have seen some people who say that it's accessible. It makes art accessible to a lot of people who might not. Like if you have, if you can't hold a pen or a pencil or a paintbrush. And I belong to several AI art like groups, and people can develop a style. There are some people who I can now immediately know who generated that piece of AI art, because you can make it your own. And I think that's really interesting. And I'm sad that we're not investigating that, because at the end of the day, people are just gonna, a famous company or whatever can use it to design their logo to rip off another artist's work and not pay anyone to do it, and then go on. I don't know. This isn't really quite coherent, and it's partially because I haven't quite sorted out all of my feelings and my exact stances on it either. I wish I had an easy solution, but I think part of it is that a lot of artists wouldn't be feeling so desperate and attacked if
they felt valued.
If they felt valued, if they were able to make living wages. And I'm not even talking about living wages as artists. I'm talking like living wages, because a lot of artists are working. I mean, I did that for a very long time. I'm super blessed that I don't have to right now, where you're working a full-time or full-time plus job and then going home and still creating, because if you don't create, you go absolutely batty.
Yeah,
I guess that's
a
one
lot
of
of
yeah.
what I talk about when I talk about block is about getting rid of stressors, and like sometimes you can't. But I know I can't create when I'm stressed. I can't read when I'm stressed. I mean, if I can't consume art, how am I going to create it? I'm going to ask you one more question because we're getting close. And I naively titled this video "Story in Ceramics," and you have already told us a bit of what you love about being a potter is that you don't have to put all of that emotion in it. Granted, I make these titles so that I can advertise the video. I write the interviews after I title them. So, and
I can circle back too.
And I love when we get conversational, and I think that makes for richer content. I would rather watch this than 2020. But do you find in the world of pottery, how do you find narrative in your work, in other people's work? Do you see it? Does it exist? What does narrative mean in this context?
Oh, I mean, it definitely exists. And that varies from potter to potter. There are some potters whose narratives are very, obvious. It's see, and now I'm gonna have that problem where I blank out and I can't remember a single other potter's name in the entire universe. But I can think of their work.
My sister is a painter who's recently taken up pottery. And she made nesting dolls for me. And so that certainly has a story, oh man, baked into it. Sorry. And it's not what we're talking about when we talk about your work being of a utilitarian variety.
Yeah, and I think even though you see like utilitarian works, there are works that are still have a narrative. There is an artist, a very famous ceramic artist, say Julia Galloway. She is making, well, she's been working on this for years now, a massive series of art about endangered animals. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had my phone on. Don't make noises. And they are, depictions of the endangered animals themselves on things like urns, which is a very clear a utilitarian object. You can still put a dead person inside of it. And two, like, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a dead person. You could put weed inside an urn. I don't care. It's a vessel. Or even like these she sometimes does plates and then like covers a whole wall. And then you have to think about the idea if I'm eating off a plate and then what is revealed at the end of my meal is an endangered animal, like that is a story. That is a big, heavy commentary on the world we live in. I would say in my work, it's, to say it's not there would be a lie. But it's usually more subtle. And I enjoy creating just like an image that really you can project what you want on it. It actually 9 times out of 10 has a deeply personal meaning to me and a reason exactly why I did that. But it's not something that I feel like has to be shared for you to enjoy it. That if you feel called to it for whatever reason, I'm happy about it. I like making things like mugs and plates and things like that because it's something that you end up developing an incredibly intimate relationship. It's silly, but how many artists can say that the people who buy their work lick it? I generally don't lick paintings and books, but man, I have a mug in my mouth. If you think about it, like it's in your mouth. And that is something I have to think about. What is the mouth feel of my freaking work? Like, I know that sounds weird and insane, but like that is,
it's true.
One of the things that drew me to ceramics is because it is a very full body experience. How does it, it's not just how it looks in the story I'm trying to tell based off how it looks. It's how it feels in your hand, how it feels on your face, how I think a lot about like when, especially with mugs, but also with bowls, like how often those objects are something you're cuddling when you don't feel well, when you're either emotionally in distress or you're nauseous and like someone gave you soup, like you want something that's comfortable. And there's so many people have like their go-to thing when they're sick or not feeling good, or they need that, it's the shitty Monday morning and they want their favorite plate or mug or something. I really like the lives of mundane objects. I like the lives of objects that are in your cabinet and of everyday use, and not necessarily the stuff that gets exiled to the hutch for display.
I love that. I'm so mad that I don't have your mug because I was using one of your mugs this morning, and I definitely hug my mugs when I'm drinking. I'm trying to. I'll do like
and
a
now I feel
like a
bad because
fist thing,
those are
you know.
slip cast. I don't
But I
I
was
don't make
thinking
those.
about your. I linked to both the short potter and print and clay, and I was thinking about what I've seen of your work, of print of the short potter. I know the difference, um, and yeah, I think I would see it in a store, or have seen it in a store, and be like, "That's pretty." But yeah, you do I'm now in my head trying to recreate all of my dishes to not be ones that, well, I got mine off Buy Nothing. But like that are, mass created in a store. Now I'm like, what if I had beautiful floral plates? And that's crazy. That's so cool.
And I also think about too about how, because it's easy to say I wish everyone bought handmade. That would be awesome, but I also know that's not practical. A lot of people can't afford it. And I've had people say, well, then I need to charge lower prices. But then it's like, okay, I have to bleed out to be. So yeah, it's my idea is then that I'd rather start creating a situation where people can have more handmade things in their life and not just have to go and get mass produced things. I would never judge anyone for having a ton of, if your favorite mug is from Target, awesome. You should love that mug just as much as you love a handmade
I have
mug.
a cool Target mug that says "You're my person."
That is a good one. And to be fair, from, I don't know this for sure, but I mean, because I looked into things like becoming like an industrial designer and things like that. Those are still artists
Those
too
are
at the end of
people.
the day. Those are people and they're still artists who are designing things. Um uh I could go into a really well, now we don't have time because I'm like, now we can talk about the Bauhaus movement and how
No,
they
go
were
for
trying to
it.
integrate, more artists into industrial design, because there kind of isn't, it's one kind of considered like selling out, and two, like, why don't we make art more accessible? Why don't we employ more artists to do, say, short runs of pieces? It's like a piece they did create that you can copy. That's the nice thing about ceramics too. Like, you can slip cast it, you can make a mold of it. We could make a run of a 500 or 1,000. Is it the same? No, but like, does it matter? Is it a difference that inherently matters if it increases appreciation and accessibility and allows artists to make their work and live making their work?
Yeah, I never mind going overtime. I mean, unless I'm busy.
There.
So
Yeah, and yeah, sorry
don't make
about
me
that, because
think.
if you get me talking, especially about art, I won't shut up.
Well, can you tell us
Mhm.
maybe a brief definition of Bauhaus?
Oh God, now I'm thinking of like people who are like
I
gonna
can
be watching.
I
Oh my
can use
God.
my favorite
I'm gonna
search engine for this if you prefer.
No, it's okay. It's just because I'm gonna be like, well, this is me, and now I'm gonna be like, it's been so long since art history.
Okay, here we
I
go.
mean,
I got
it
Bauhaus is a German artistic movement which lasted from
Mhm.
1919 to 1933. Its goal was to merge all artistic mediums into one unified approach, that of combining an individual's artistry with mass production and function. Bauhaus design is often abstract, angular, and geometric with little ornamentation.
And I love a lot of Bauhaus ceramics. I spend a lot of time looking at them, which you would probably be surprised about if you look at my work and then look at Bauhaus work. But I particularly love the idea of bringing artists into mass production. And I also think
I mean, if anyone
that,
should be there, it's artists, right?
yeah, and well, yeah, everyone. No, but I also think too, again, with a lot of things, one of the biggest issues with mass production is our emphasis on overconsumption. Mass production can be used to make things more accessible and to make a well-made item. A lot of people can have it. I think the problem is that it's just so focused on churning and burning that you buy it, it breaks, you buy another, you buy it, it breaks, it buys another. I don't think the problem is that we have efficient ways to make ceramics in a factory. I think the problem is our relationship with that. I'd rather have like, and maybe this is like the limited supply, but like, I'd rather go into a big box store and have 5 mugs that were designed by 5 artists that I can choose from, maybe seasonally, than 5,000 mugs that say something flippant. And I also realize I'm throwing myself in that own camp, because if you look at my print and clay work, those are factory mass produced ceramic mugs. I hand decorate them, I make the stamps, I do the designs and everything that say flipping things like I'm a fucking unicorn. I mean, I know, I know, I live in a society, I can't get out of it. But I also know if I shuttered print and clay, that isn't going to send the message to to the powers that be.
Yeah, I want to actually, you said that your mugs with print and clay are slip cast. Can you tell me what that means?
Oh, sorry. So yes, so slip casting is something you can do in large batches or on huge mass production scale. But it's pretty much how all ceramic you buy in the store. So you make a mug. Someone has to make the mug, and then they make a plaster mold of it, or in this case, hundreds and thousands of plaster molds of it. And then you take clay that has been turned into slip, which is pretty much like a soupy clay. It's like the consistency of bisque. You pour that into the plaster mold, and
I
because
can't
of
even imagine
nature,
that.
because of the nature of plaster, it pulls the moisture out, and then you can crack the mold open. You open the mold up, and then now you have a mug inside. This is a super oversimplification of the whole process, but end of day, it's you make a thing, you make the mold, and then now you're using the mold to pour liquid clay into it to make identical copies.
That's
There's
really cool.
It's really cool. And there's a lot of artists who use that as a production method, but I mean are still incredibly small batch. The ones I have, I'll admit, I buy from a ceramics. They're made by one of the big companies, Mako, in a factory somewhere. And the nice thing about them is that it allows me to keep the costs down on those works, which makes it easier for me to sell. Because if I was hand throwing all of them, I would have to at least tack on another $10 to $15. And now we're making a $20 to $25 mug, now a $35 to $40 mug. And I understand that while that seems like a small jump, that can totally knock out a lot of people from a
I would have a
splurge.
hard time justifying a $40 mug, and I buy a lot of mugs.
Yeah, and that would be if I just started throwing them. When I sell a mug that I've thrown and done all of my extra hand decorating on and glazing and multiple firings, we're talking $60 mug. And I get it. Like that's tough to do. That's not something the average person can be like, you know what, I'm gonna treat myself to a $60 mug.
I'm really trying to imagine it though. I love mugs.
I mean, and I've done it too, but the funny thing is the people who are doing it are then other ceramic artists. It becomes just like a little, we just keep handing the same $60 to each other.
Yeah. There's something I see poets complain about a lot, which is that no one who reads poetry is not a poet, which is untrue. But you read poetry, that's the best.
Yeah, I would that.
My face was at the way I said the word best, not at you.
I was on a tear last night, actually. I didn't go to bed on time because I was in a poetry hole.
No, it's not true. I know tons of non-writers who read poetry. I mean, not tons. I don't know that many people. But it's something that we hear a lot, like who is consuming this other than my peers. It is what it is. The people who care a lot are the people who care a lot.
Oh, and well, I know because we're over time, but I gotta add one more of my like things I think are important. And it's why we should have arts in schools and in colleges, and why it's freaking important. Because the number one thing I always hear from students in art classes is, I thought this would be easy. I thought this would be easy. I thought this would be, there's so many students who come in who are like, I thought this would be therapy, which I'm always like, there can be an aspect to that, but that's not the same. And I mean, the vast majority of students who go through an art class aren't going to go on and be artists. And I don't think that's a failure, because a lot of colleges are like, well, if you're not making art majors, then
no,
the department's a failure. And I said, I don't think that's a failure, because two reasons. One, I mean, the art classes are always completely booked up and waitlisted. People want in. And two, a lot of people leave with an appreciation of, they start understanding that just because someone makes something look easy, it's because they worked at it. It's not because the thing is inherently easy. And I see them applying that to other fields and other mediums as well. You come out with a much deeper appreciation of like, oh, whoa, like this. Very few of them didn't leave going, a kindergartner could have made this. And I don't think that's a perspective that only applies to someone wandering through a museum. That is a perspective that applies to life. Especially when you think of like, unskilled jobs or unskilled labor, there's nothing that doesn't require work to do well. You can't, if someone plopped you down and gave you no instruction to do a job, no matter how easy that job is, you'd fuck up. And I think learning a new thing, especially in art, is a great way to do that. One, because then it's a fun way to do it. And you get a cool thing at the end. And two, it's a deeply needed perspective, I think, these days.
I can't disagree with you. You are preaching to the choir.
I'm sorry, I can try to come up with a hot take we can fight about.
That sounds horrible. Don't do that. Thank you for that. Okay. I don't
already like 15 over.
I don't want to stop talking. We're just gonna have Jenna back. We're gonna have a segment. Maybe I'm gonna try and put a panel together on AI art. This is very fruitful. I took a lot of notes. Normally I haven't, I mean, you saw me reach for a notebook, but I had to like reach for it. Normally I take paper notes and figure them out later, but I took a lot of notes digitally today. This has been really fruitful for me as an artist, as someone who works in the arts, and as someone who's interested in things. So real quick, I'm gonna run through what I can. I'm gonna do my auctioneer talking. Actually, I don't know if this was real or not, but I saw a map the other day of the fastest speaking states in the country, and Iowa was one of the fastest speaking states in the country. So I'm gonna hold on. I'm already doing it. I'm gonna pull on my Iowa talking uh for things that are coming up at the Midwest Writing Center. This Saturday we have a workshop titled Things About to Disappear, led by professor and poet Gwen Hart. You can find her work online. That's HART. That'll be a Zoom workshop on Saturday. It's the poetry of pop culture, incorporating pop culture into your art, looking into ways in which pop culture has been successfully used in poetry. And then it's a generative workshop. So we'll create our own. Then on February 2nd, that's not right. Unless February 2nd is a Thursday. The first Thursday of February, we're going to have a workshop called Our Cultures Ourselves, in which I don't have the book next to me, author of the book, The Legacy of Lost Things, Ada Zalelian, will be teaching on how to use your culture in your writing. That'll be a generative workshop as well. It will also be primarily prose focused, but for both of these workshops, it is not genre exclusive. Whatever comes naturally to you, we welcome it. You can always learn something from artists of other forms, other media. We're starting in February, February 4th, and I think the 17th, the first and third Saturday of the month, we will be doing in-person writer's studio. So we're going to continue to do our Zoom group with me, but we will also this is a trial run. This is not a forever thing yet, but we'll also be meeting in person. I won't be there since I'll be on Zoom at the Writing Center. That's 11 to 1 on the first and third Saturday of the month in February. The Writing Center is located on the ground floor of the Rock Island Public Library. And those are strict hours because the library does close at 1. Yeah, so folks who miss Writer's Studio, who have not wanted to come online, for whom the internet is, well, you're probably not watching this if you're not online, but who miss getting together with other writers, we're going back to in person on a trial basis in February. We also, of course, have more Light videos coming on the 30th. We've got a guest. I'll be out of town, so we'll have a guest host. That'll be former MWC intern Ava Miller. I cannot remember the topic that they chose, but it's going to be great. I remember being excited about it. So that'll be fun. You won't have to hang out with me. You'll be hanging out with Ava. Yeah, that's oh, Iron Pen. I knew I was forgetting something important. Our Iron Pen contest is coming up at the end of February. That is a 24-hour writing contest in which we give you the prompt at 5 p.m. on Friday. You submit your work by 5 p.m. on Saturday. In the genres fiction, poetry, and nonfiction, $10 to enter. All entries are entered in a chance to win full tuition to the Collins Writers Conference, which is like a $400 value. Also, it's going to be really, really great. I can't announce this year's faculty yet, but it's a really, really excellent conference, which is open to anyone. Another thing for Ada Zalelian's workshop, I believe in March, which is telling family stories. The Legacy Book Press is offering I think it's a raffle or raffle style. Someone will be randomly chosen to win free tuition. They're doing two tuition covers. They're covering 2 people's tuition for the Telling Family Stories workshop. So I'll put the link to that somewhere accessible. I mean, I'll definitely post it on Facebook, but I'll put it in the comments here and in the description on YouTube. So you can find information on how to enter to win tuition to telling family stories. Whew, okay. Ordinarily I hang out for the 5 minutes of our free write, but today I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have Jenna give us the prompt. I hope that you will give yourself the 5 minutes to work on it. I know I am going to, because I know what the prompt is and I'm really excited about it. Jenna, please give us the prompt. And
Wait,
then wait, sorry. And then everyone please write more light into your life. Jenna, take it away.
I'm sorry.
No, that was on me. I said, do the thing, but let me stop you.
And I promise if you have me on for a panel, I'll have notes and definitions and examples ready to go. But the writing prompt is, I want you to think of like a mug or a plate you love a lot. What if it broke? Write a eulogy for it. A eulogy for a piece of ceramic that you love in your life.
I love this so much. I very recently asked Jenna, "Look, can I do something with my broken mug?" And Jenna was like, not really. Actually, I'll put fun ideas in the chat too. So write a eulogy or an elegy for your broken special piece of ceramic. Thank you so much for being here, Jenna. I really am going to make you come back because this was so good, like for me personally. And everyone else, please go write more light into your life.